Is it true that Israel does not allow Christians freedom to worship? Occupying Till He Comes at Southwest Prophecy Ministries.
Welcome again, friends. This is Dane Rome, your announcer for today's Last Days Beacon program. Thank you for listening, and thanks for joining us. Just a reminder that these programs are supported by your gifts to this ministry. If you would like to contribute to this ongoing faith ministry, which deals with biblical prophecy and current events, simply go to our website to contribute. Our website address is www.swpm.us. You will find a donate link on the homepage. The website address again is www.swpm.us. Thank you for your prayers and support for this ongoing faith ministry. On today's program, Dr. Schnitger interviews Carol Rushton regarding her brand new book entitled Understanding Israel and the Middle East. This book is subtitled Myths, Misconception, and the Truth About Israel and Her Neighbors. In this 25-chapter book, Carol deals with many of the lies and anti-Israel propaganda that we hear so often in the Western media. Carol lived in Israel for 8 years while working for the Jerusalem Post. She also studied the Middle East and Bible prophecy for most of her life. All of this knowledge and experience is included in this very timely book released on the 70th anniversary of the modern state of Israel. So let's join Dr. Schnitger and Carol Rushton for today's informative message.
Thank you, Dane. Welcome, friends, to this week's edition of the Last Days Beacon podcast. This is truly an exciting time at Southwest Prophecy Ministries. As you know, we are a fairly young ministry, having started in September of 2015. And by the grace of God, we've just published our third book, entitled Understanding Israel and the Middle East. This book is subtitled Myths, Misconceptions, and the Truth About Israel and Her Neighbors. This book has 25 chapters, is 175 pages in length, and its publishing is at such an appropriate time in world history as 2018 marks Israel's 70th birthday as a modern nation. And never before in human history has a dispersed people group been regathered from around the world and reestablished in their ancient homeland, all in fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Just think about it, friends. We have the Israeli people dispersed around the world in AD 70 with the fall of Jerusalem, Jews dispersed around the world, persecuted around the world. The very fact of their survival is truly a miracle from God. But then we had with the Balfour Declaration in 1917, the official permission of Jews to begin regathering to their ancient homeland, and then recognized by the United Nations as a modern state on May 14th, 1948, just a little over 70 years ago. And that regathering continues even today in fulfillment of both Old Testament and New Testament prophecy. So we're celebrating God's miracle country, the nation Israel, having just celebrated its 70th birthday. And most people, individuals, when they celebrate their 70th birthday, aren't particularly proud of the fact and are perhaps in some stage of decline, but that's certainly not true of the modern nation of Israel. They seem to be getting stronger and more mature and developed with each passing year. And the aliyah, the regathering of Jews, continues even today. Well, it is such a privilege to have back in studio today the author of the book and my friend Carol Rushton. Carol is back. It's great to have you back in our studio today.
Well, I am thrilled and excited to be here.
We should give you a marathon award because this is our 5th program. We could probably have 25 programs, but then folks wouldn't have to buy the book because they'd know all about it. To be honest, folks, we're shamelessly promoting the book and just giving you enough information to where you will not be able to resist purchasing it, and getting the rest of the information that Carol has so studiously included in this book. We've been dealing with charges against Israel that are often put forward not only by the Arab neighbors but by the compliant Western press in order to set the record straight. And we truly believe that facts are stubborn things, so we're stubbornly presenting the facts regarding these charges. And one charge that is often rendered against the Israeli government is that they do not really promote freedom of worship for other religions. Last week we dealt with the Muslims' access to their holy sites, and we discovered that, truth be told, Muslims have complete freedom to their holy sites. It's actually the Jews that don't have complete freedom to their holy sites. But a charge that is often rendered is that Christians, and there are many of them, both Gentile and Jews who are Christians, believers in the Lord Jesus Christ, that Christians do not have freedom to worship in Israel. Carol, having lived there for 8 years as a Gentile Christian, could you answer that charge?
Yes, and again, this is one of the more laughable ones, I think. There are churches in Israel. Now, there are more synagogues in Israel than there are churches because Israel is a Jewish country. But there are churches. Christians are allowed to have churches. I actually knew of a Baptist church. Something had happened to their building. It was destroyed, burned down, or something had happened to their building. Well, while they were trying to either repair or rebuild their church building, there was a synagogue who allowed them to use their worship space when they were not in it. So that's, that particular synagogue didn't have to let the Christians use their space, but they chose to do so until they could either repair or rebuild. Now, as far as, again, this charge that Israel does not allow Christians to have freedom to worship, I'd like to further answer that. Actually, now their Christians have to kind of make accommodations, I think would be the way to phrase that. A lot of the Christian churches now have services on Saturday instead of Sunday, simply because for Jews, their day off to worship is Saturday, so they don't work on Saturday. They're not allowed to work on Saturday. So, but then when Sunday comes, it's back to the normal work week. So a lot of the Christian churches, not all, but a lot of them have made accommodations to also have their services on Saturday when most people have that off for work, because that's how the country is structured. So now, when you talk about things like Christmas, Christians are allowed to celebrate Christmas. They're allowed to celebrate Easter. You'll see the, people, the processions. I think most of the Catholics do this, carrying the cross and up through the city to what people believe is Calvary. You have at Christmas time, people are allowed to put up Christmas decorations if they so choose. In fact, the Israeli government sometimes provides free Christmas trees to Christians, and they can pick up a free Christmas tree at certain designated spots, and so they can celebrate their Christmas. Now, there aren't a lot of decorations to buy in December. So at that particular time of the year. So what Christians usually do is during the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, which is usually around the end of September, the beginning or mid-October, Jews during Sukkot will have these little bitty houses, or that it's called a sukkah, and they will decorate it, and they'll decorate in the insides, and they'll have things that look to Christians like they could be Christmas decorations. And so a lot of Christians will buy decorations during the September-October period and then just save them back and use them on their Christmas trees in their apartments or houses when they celebrate Christmas. So as a Christian, you might have to make a slight adjustment if you're going to have a Christmas tree or celebrate Christmas or Easter. But the Israeli government doesn't restrict it. Christians, they don't tell them, no, you can't be a Christian, no, you can't worship, no, you can't go to church.
So you don't have to be a registered church like in communist China and meet underground like they did in the old Soviet Union. If you're a Christian, you can be an above ground public Christian meeting in churches without benefit of a government permission slip.
No, this is so silly. Now, they don't want Christians to proselytize. They don't want Christians to be try to actively convert people. That's a good way to get kicked out of a country, out of Israel. If they discover that you're doing that, they'll get rid of you pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. But other than that, you can do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That restriction would probably go for Islamic people who are trying to convert Jews to the Islamic faith too, I would think.
Well, I don't think that there are a whole lot of Jews who are real anxious to convert to Islam.
Yes.
It's, so I don't
considering that one of their avowed purposes is the destruction of all Jews.
Yes.
So it's probably not a very favorable evangelistic strategy for reaching Jews for Allah.
No, no. There might be a few who have done that. But mostly
probably at the edge of the sword.
Yeah,
that's generally how they try to convert people.
Well, actually, you do have circumstances in which you'll have an Israeli Jew who will marry an Israeli Arab, mm-hmm. and it just depends upon the family involved and how receptive they are to accepting something like this, because Jewish families not really usually too receptive to, one of their children marrying an Arab.
Mm-hmm. I can certainly understand that.
But it does happen.
Probably happens, and it's generally regrettable after the fact.
Yeah, it's not real accepted over there, but it just depends upon the family and their response to it. But it does go on, but it's not real widespread.
Well, let's talk about another issue that seems to be an impediment to peace in Israel. For those who visited the tiny New Jersey-sized nation of Israel, you are aware that in the northern region, the Galilee region north of the Sea of Galilee, you have what's commonly known as the Golan Heights, the northern mountainous region that separates Israel from Syria. And there's a lot of controversy. There has been, I guess, since Israel took possession of the Golan, I think back in the 1980s. And that is, why is it that Israel cannot give up the Golan Heights to Syria for peace? After all, the Golan Heights has never been a part of historical Israel. So what's the big deal about the Golan? They're just mountains, aren't they? Isn't Israel just being difficult by not returning the Golan Heights to Syria?
Well, actually, the Golan Heights is a part of historical Israel. The Golan Heights is what makes up the ancient region called Bashan. When Moses was leading the Israelites out of Egypt, and they had finished their 40-year wanderings in the desert, and they were going to start entering the land and conquering it. Before they actually crossed the Jordan River, they actually had a number of battles and skirmishes with some of the other kings and people groups in that particular area, and one of them was with the king of Bashan and his people, and Moses and Joshua led the battle, and they actually defeated the king of Bashan. And so for thousands of years, the Golan Heights has actually been part of the traditional ancient land of Israel. And there have actually been artifacts from thousands of years ago, Israeli artifacts found on the Golan Heights. So it actually is a part of historical Israel. Now, the reason why Israel will not, one of the reasons, that I think that's a very good reason. I mean,
Yes.
It's part of historical Israel. But another reason is because of it's a strategic defense portion of the land of Israel. When Syria had total control over the Golan Heights, they would periodically, again, shoot rockets in over into Israel proper, and they, of course, this was right down into the Hula Valley, and where Israel was trying to establish farms and whatever they were trying to do. This was part of Israeli land, so it made it rather difficult for the Jewish inhabitants to do a whole lot when you're having rockets fall on you. That doesn't make for a real peaceful situation, and it makes it really difficult to live and get anything
Plus,
done.
Any military strategist will tell you the advantages to having the high ground. And the Golan is the high ground. And as you're saying, that before the Golan was returned to Israel, they would use this, Syria would use the high ground of the Golan to fire rockets into basically the main territory of Israel, where people were living peacefully, trying to grow crops and go about their daily lives. And here you have this mountainous region as the staging ground for rocket attacks into Israel. So from a strategic point of view, the possessor of the Golan has a real strategic advantage, doesn't it?
Yes. So, I mean, Israel wasn't trying to take back that land, but in successive wars, they achieved that. And so it's really important for them to have the Golan Heights. It's simply, it helps to protect them. There is actually a military base up at the Golan Heights. I believe it was in 1984 that I went on a trip. And I was so excited because on that particular trip, we were going to get to actually be a view and have a tour of the military base on the Golan Heights. So I was super, super excited. And the bus stopped at the bottom of the hill, and we walked all the way up, and we hadn't even gotten to the gate, and they told us that the tour was canceled. And I was so disappointed because I had to walk, not only do we have to all walk all the way back down to the bus, but I was so disappointed because I really love the Israeli military and was so excited to get to see this. Well, we found out that the Israeli military from that particular military base, they monitor the Syrian defense positions, of course, and they also are very aware of their military maneuvers every day. So they have to constantly watch what Syria is doing, and in the military maneuvers that Syria had done for that particular day, there was just something different about them, and they couldn't take the chance that they might have to respond militarily. So the base was on alert, and that's why we didn't get to go in.
So the last thing that the Israeli military wanted was a busload of tourists right in the middle of what could have been a basically defensive operation from that base.
Yeah, no, it ended up there was no need to launch any type of a military response, but they just couldn't take the chance. And seeing it from their point of view, of course, they were very wise. I also remember, not only on that tour, but on another previous tour some years that I'd gone on previously to Israel, we were visiting certain spots in the Golan Heights, and the tour guides were and the bus driver, very, very adamant about us following the stone paths. We had to follow the paths that were outlined in stone. They really made a big impression on us that we were not to go outside the stones, because Syria had that land for a long time, and they had planted a lot of
landmines. Okay.
And the air and up there, and the Israeli military, they were trying, even after all those years, they were trying to clear the land of these landmines, but they just had not completed everything. And so they told us, you have to walk inside the pathways, because we don't know if there are any landmines outside of those pathways. We know that there are no landmines in these particular areas. And they told us, if you go outside those paths, you're taking your life in your hands. And they would tell us, well, there was just recently somebody got out of the path and they were going along, and of course they stepped on a landmine they didn't know was there, and they were killed. So they tried to really caution us and warn us about doing things like that. Now, one of the things that Israel has been able to do since they've had the possession of the Golan Heights, they've actually been able to, number one, plant a lot of vineyards, which produces a lot of grapes, and they're really famous for their wine from the Golan Heights. And they also I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. I can't remember what I was going to say now. There's something else I was going to... Let me think of... There was something else. Israel has also established a nature reserve up on the Golan Heights. It's called the Gamla Nature Reserve. And this nature reserve has... it protects a lot of the wildlife, and particularly the birds. And you have the vultures and the eagles coming back to Israel. This is actually a fulfillment of Bible prophecy as far as the wildlife coming back to Israel in the latter days, when Israel would be reestablished as a nation. And so the Gamla Nature Reserve actually protects a lot of the wildlife, and it's exciting to see that the eagles and the vultures are coming back now to Israel, and it's because of that nature reserve. So those are some of the things. There's a very strategic military importance, and we don't want to de-emphasize that on all. But it's interesting that because they've had possession of the Golan Heights, they've been able to do other things with it. I think that's very exciting.
That are peaceful.
Yes.
And humanitarian and ecologically correct as well, and in fulfillment of Bible prophecy. And of course, we could talk about Ezekiel 37 and 38, the great feast for these carrion birds that is being prepared by God when that great slaughter of the northern hordes takes place in the future. So it's just amazing to see how our God, who is a God of nature, is preparing the fulfillment of yet future Bible prophecies. And of course, the possession of the Golan Heights is part of that preparation. So God never does anything by half measures. He's always prepared for what he himself has predicted. And this is but another example of that. Well, this has been a great series of interviews, Carol. This is interview number 5, and I want to thank you for joining me over these past 5 weeks to discuss your exciting new book.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been great to be here. And of course, I always love talking about Israel. It's one of the great passions in my life. And to see God's hand at work in Israel and among the Jewish people, and the way they're preparing Israel. I mean, a lot of Jews now are more and more every day recognizing that these are the times of the Messiah. And so it's an exciting time to be alive, and it's exciting to watch what's going on in Israel and the Middle East today.
Well, certainly your book lives up to its name, Understanding Israel and the Middle East. As a result of working with you on the book, I think I have a better understanding as to what is truly going on in Israel and the Middle East today. And it's exciting and encouraging. God is in control. He is doing miraculous things in Israel today. And though we generally just hear about the negative things, many positive things are happening as well. And God is preparing the way for the return of His Son, the Messiah, the Lord Jesus Christ. And many Jews, even those who are not yet believers, do have messianic expectations at this particular time, perhaps not recognizing who that Messiah is, but they certainly have an anticipation that Messiah will come, and so God is preparing the way for that wonderful event that will bring peace in the Middle East. My friends, I'm sure you will want to get a copy for yourself and for your friends, possibly for your own pastor, of this exciting new book. It's unique. I don't think there's anything like it on the market today. And it will truly help you to understand Israel and the Middle East. And so now our announcer, Dane Rome, will share how you may obtain a copy of this informative new book.
Thank you, Dr. Schnitker. Today, we're offering the latest book published by Southwest Prophecy Ministries. The book is entitled Understanding Israel and the Middle East by Carol Rushton. The concluding chapter of the book is written by Dr. Schnitker and deals with God's peace plan for the Middle East. This professionally published book has 25 chapters and is 175 pages in length. You may obtain a copy of the Understanding Israel and Middle East for a gift of $9.99 plus $2 for shipping and handling. To obtain your copy, go to our website, www.swpm.us. Go to our bookstore and type in Understanding Israel and the Middle East. The website address again is www.swpm.us. Well, friends, please join us again for next week's Last Days Beacon program, brought to you by Southwest Prophecy Ministries. Until then, this is your announcer, Dane Rome, saying thanks for listening.